Thanks for checking out another clip of the Cashflow Contractor. We'd love to have you as a part of our audience. Click subscribe wherever you get your podcast.
There was some event after you got books and you were up and running. Something caused you to go, I know what it is. I'm going to see if we're on the same page about it, where you said, wow, this is false information I got. And it caused me to make some incorrect decisions. The size of the revenue is what I'm talking about, if you remember that story.
Yeah. So yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I'm happy to explain that. But before that, there's been a couple other similar instances to where, just sometimes the numbers wasn't lining up. Numbers of what we were producing, numbers of what, our gross profits were, our gross profit percentages, our gross profit dollars, all the way down to the net profits. And to be fair, when I first started this business, I didn't care about net profits. I cared about getting Google reviews, because in today's society, you got to play the game with Google if you want to grow a company. So I wanted to make customers happy. I wanted to do a good job, and I was just looking to get reviews. I had my dad in my ear the whole time saying, hey man, the reward's got to be worth the risk. You got to make some money at some point. I was fortunate to have a full-time job at that time, and me and my wife lived, well below our means. So the fire department was paying, all of our bills. My wife had a job. So, we were living fine. And I just kept telling my dad, hey, the profits will come. The profits will come. And we went over numerous speed bumps, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But there was a major event that happened for us on the financial side in 2023. This was not long after I hired Tracy, and I'll tell you in a minute why that's important. So met with my business coach approximately August of 2023, and I said, Stuart, something ain't adding up. My income statement is telling me that we are absolutely killing it. We're making $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 profit, $700,000 profit, but where is the money? And I say that because it's funny. I think it's under the title on your book, Martin. What is it? They say I'm making money.
So why don't I have any? Yeah. Why don't I have any? Yeah.
Well, I don't have any. So, so me and Stuart looked at a bunch of financial documents, looked at our internal scorecards. Our first thought was that because we were still on a cash basis, which I'm so thankful we have swapped over to the accrual, but at the time we was on cash, and we chopped it up to a fluctuation in sales. And when that income was recognized, it was skewing the books. So we started tracking that. Well, come November, I think it's mid to end of November, we hired Tracy, I believe, in September. So end of November, I met with Stuart again. I said, Stuart, 911 emergency. Like, something's going on. It ain't sales. We got to figure this out. So me and him met one morning. I spoke with him at home about like I am right now. I left to go meet my team for lunch, and they had a running joke every time they would see me. They were like, what, you've been sleeping all morning? And I'm like, yeah, if there was any morning I wish I was sleeping all morning, it was this morning. And they're like, well, why you say that? I'm like, well, we're missing $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. And we didn't know where it was at. We had just identified that, something was going on, and we had to do a little bit more digging in. And I had to go get my truck after lunch at a shop or whatever. But anyways, long story short, Tracy took it upon her and another manager I had. They went back to our warehouse at the time, and they started digging into it. And she called me probably 30, 40 minutes after lunch. I was still actually talking to a friend of mine that owns that shop. And she said, hey, we found your issue. And so, I can't thank Tracy enough. She was able to find the issue. And a long story short, there was a technology error between the integration of our CRM and QuickBooks. This is not the first time that's happened. This is actually the second time this has happened. The first time was with a different CRM. So needless to say, like, we do not link our CRM to our QuickBooks anymore. We may get back to a point where we test it out to some degree. But luckily we were, I'll tell you more about why I say we might test it out, but luckily Tracy identified it. We had to make some changes in the business, some pretty significant changes. And I'll tell you how big this accounting error was. So I left the fire department. We had a private pension. I've been there for almost 12 years. We had a private pension. I was making, and it's public knowledge, so I don't mind sharing it, is $104,000 at the time as a captain. I had bought $1 million commercial facility. So, those were some pretty big life-changing events. And I did all that based on the wrong numbers.
Wow.
And so when it hit hard. Now, back to the comment I made, thankfully, my wife and I live well below our means.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do it without that.
That's right. And so I actually probably can take it back to say, thankful for my dad for teaching me some financial discipline growing up.
Do you mind sharing some of those financial disciplines, Cory? Because I think that's a really important thing that people kind of gloss over and assume people understand.
Yeah. So, well, it started when I was 7 years old, 7, 8 years old. My dad's like, we ain't rolling the window down in the car and turning the AC on. And I'm like, well, I don't understand why. He said, I get better gas mileage with no, I'm sorry. He said, we're going to roll the windows down into the AC. And I'm like, why? He said, well, I get better gas mileage with the AC off. So like, I laugh about it now, but it's the small things similar to that led up until I was 16 years old. And he, his big thing was him and my mom was like, hey, you have good grades, you play sports, you have a job, which we have not forced you to have. Like, we will pay for your truck. We will pay for your food. We'll pay for everything you need as long as your grades are good. You stay out of trouble. You don't have to keep a job as long as you're playing sports. If you quit sports, you got to get a job. But if you want a job, and I always wanted a job, so they were fine with that. But he provided me spreadsheets with everything. He's like, hey, this is what your truck costs. This is what the insurance costs. This is what the fuel costs. This is what wear and tear and maintenance. And he's like, these are things we're paying for. You need to recognize it. Well, when I went to college, same thing. He's like, hey, you're playing baseball in college. Your grades are up. You're staying out of trouble. I'm going to give you $100 a week. $100 a week is your fuel, your food money. It does not include beer. Like, he told me, I'm not paying for your beer. If you want to drink beer, you pay for that on your own. However, but I had a spreadsheet for how I had to budget that $100. And so, he was able, and he's the type that, if he wants to buy a new car, even still to this day, he's looking at a truck right now. It will take him 6 to 8 months to go buy that truck. And he can afford it. Well, like 1000% he can afford it. But that's just how he is. Now, I'm a little bit opposite in that standpoint, where if I want something, as long as I can afford it, I'm going to get it like within days. But I'm just thankful, to see some of those spreadsheets he was putting together. And I even remember part of his job was making sure that he didn't overspend his $500 million budget that he had to manage, but he didn't want to underspend either. And so every year at Christmas, he took 2 weeks off. And I say off as in like he worked from home, because he'd have his laptop pulled up, and at the end of every day, he would go in there and look at spreadsheets to see like, how much did they spend today? How much did it cost his budget? And he would be calling his subcontractor saying, hey, I need you to put 2 guys on overtime tomorrow. We need to get a little bit more work done. And he was managing that all the way down as close to zero as possible without overspending, because then overspending doesn't look good on him. But underspending, he needs that budget next year, and he knows if he don't spend it, they'll take it. So I was just able to learn a lot of these little things that added up throughout my teens, and even still today at 33 years old. Like, me and my dad still talk heavily on the financial side. Whether it's his finances, my finances, whatever, but it just intrigues both of us.
No, that's fantastic. I think that's a really big part of, you just even look at where we're at as a country in our finances. Like, people need financial literacy, and it doesn't come from a class. It comes from real life situations like your dad's put you through, and walking through the steps and having the errors, having the issues come up, living through those hard experiences where you didn't have money to pay for gas one week and you had to go back to your dad. Like, that's a small potatoes thing, right? But it puts you through the steps of what's going to happen in the future so that you avoid that.
Sure.
And I think in the same capacity, that's why there's a lot of value in sharing some of the financial details with your employees and having them aware of some of that stuff, because they approach problems differently. They approach inventory differently. They approach, cost overruns differently, because they understand the financial picture. Whereas if they don't have that view and that perspective or that lens, then they can make the wrong decisions and just not think practically, right? Thanks for checking out a clip from the Cashflow Contractor. We have full episodes where we go deep on topics that help you grow a construction business that runs without you so you can have less stress, more time, more money. Now, we've got other videos, other clips, but if you want to check out the full episode for this clip, you can click wherever our editor put it. It might be here, might be there, might be over my face, I don't know. But thank you for checking us out. We'd love to have you as a part of our audience. So subscribe or check out a full episode wherever you get podcasts.